Welcome, one and all, to Enlightened Conversations, where this season we're going just that little bit deeper and not skimming on the judgy surface of life. I will also be sharing conversations with my guides, and you can be guaranteed that all the topics that come through are authentic, life-changing and enlightened, because we want you to live a more joyful, peaceful and loving vibration. Let's go. Hi everyone, it's Michelle Lightworker here and welcome to Enlightened Conversations. Today we're exploring a question that's as old as humanity itself. Is it my destiny or is it my choice? Have you ever had one of those days where you just want to scream, "Why me?" when it feels like life is happening to you, not because of you? What if I told you that the story is far more intricate? That before we even took our first breath, our soul made agreements, spiritual contracts with higher realms, crafting a path of lessons, challenges, and joys meant to guide us closer to our true essence. But here's the twist. We have the power of free will, the ability to change course, renegotiate our path, and unlock higher levels of consciousness. What some call the sixth dimension or 6D spirituality. In this episode, we'll unpack how destiny and choice dance together in the grand design, and how spiritual contracts shape our lives, and how embracing this understanding can transform our relationship with suffering, joy, and ultimately our purpose. Let's get started. So last episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Savitha Ani, and we spoke about the third, fourth, and fifth dimension and how we get caught up in the chaos of our ascension to our fifth dimension, our healing process, and the imprints that we have to heal on an astral level or in the 4D can really cripple us and make us feel really ungrounded and really chaotic. And this episode, I feel like offering the 6D perspective is going to help lift a little insofar as when we're going through all that muck and we're trying to work things out, it helps to shift our focus in a direction that's really a lot more positive. Sort of like not the doom and gloom aspect that we can spiral into. I mean, it's a normal part of grief when we're going through healing to hit depression and hopelessness that we can't change things, or things won't shift, or they'll never be the same as they were again. However, if we've got this higher perspective, what that can help us do is elevate our vision of the situation to a more holistic view, not just like incremental and this is it and this is my reality forever, because we can spiral right down into depression when we have that thought process going on in our minds. So what we're going to talk about today is how we always have free will on board, and that even precipitates this lifetime. So in my book, Making Light Work, when I first wrote it back in 2006 and I channeled this information through, this was actually the second chapter of the book. And it really comes into play more and more nowadays. I find that, from what was a simple chapter, it was very short actually, that I channeled through, what's come of that in society, in healing, in, I guess you could say, the new age spirituality, because in many mainstream religions, they believe there is only one life. In different religions, such as Buddhism, they believe there are multiple lives and that we have a chance to grow through those lives. I believe that we have a choice to come back in, as much as we have a choice before we come into all the lessons that we are going to learn. Planning certain obstacles or hindrances or situations, or even let's call them situations, along the way, helps to mold our soul and to steer us in a certain direction. You could say that our guardian angel is us in this aspect of viewing this. However, I look at it a lot deeper than that. I find that if we understand we're always working in collaboration with guides before we enter, while we're here, even if we don't realize it, they're always around us and helping us. And that we've made contracts and relationships with those guides as much as in that metaphysical form as we have relationships here planned to shape us on a physical, material, romantic, work level that will grow our soul in various different ways. So let's just take a little bit of a look around, I guess, a summary of what, I guess, this destiny versus choice entails. I've made some points here. And so our free will, as I believe, in connection with our higher self at some levels, and at other levels, it's in connection with various parts of our astral body and those aspects such as our inner child and just different aspects of our soul. They can be in the driver's seat, as we know. So often we get into a lot of a pickle when we have someone else other than our higher self driving the bus. It's a little bit like a toddler driving the bus, and we, have high expectations not to crash. However, of course, inevitably, if the toddler doesn't have their driver's license or any idea of the road rules, how are they going to not crash the bus? It's like setting them up to fail. So as we recover and as we heal, understanding that our higher self's will, when it's engaged, is very powerful. And I don't believe that the higher self will is like the toddler or other aspects of our astral body will, which is often a slither of our psyche that has turned up the volume to grab the wheel, or feels abandoned and grabs hold of the wheel or our will, if you like. And so as we're recovering and growing in our understanding and our connection to our higher self, we're able to take the wheel back, the wheel, and allow ourselves to drive the bus. However, the higher self doesn't operate alone. The higher self-consciousness is one that is connected to unity consciousness. And this is where 6D is very much unity consciousness, where we understand what's good for ourselves is also good for the whole, and what's good for the whole is also good for ourselves. So we have this understanding that there's a push-pull situation in a good way, and we're able to let go of our self-will run riot, as our recovery addiction circles talk about. That's the raging self-will gone nuts, just in addiction, sliding into addiction. So we're able to let go and let God, as they say, let go of the will, let go of the bus, and allow our higher self to come in and to start driving the bus and to start directing our lives in a more calm but joyful way as well. Not all sort of will-related things have to be a deprivation. They can be a joy as well. So another talking point that I have that I wanted to talk about is that we kind of understand that before we come in, we have what we call a council, if you like, a group of guides that we chat to and just make decisions on what I need to experience for my growth as a human being to evolve. So we make these contracts. We set them up with between ourselves and our other people as well. And we make these agreements, but the reality is sometimes, and this does happen, I've experienced it myself, sometimes you learn so much you didn't need the contract. And it's almost like you accelerated because of the free will along the way, on the journey of all the choices that we make. Sometimes, it gives ourselves the benefit of the doubt that we might need to have more hectic, chaotic experiences to grow from. But sometimes we actually get it sooner rather than later. And we get on a recovery track that is more in line with our higher self, more in line with flow, more in line with manifesting things for our highest good and the good of all. And that 6D reality here, that 6D reality here on this planet. And so what can happen then is that people may come into our lives that we've contracted with, and we really get a sense of dis-ease around those people straight away. And we just know they're not for us, or that environment's not for us. And that's our intuition kicking in, and potentially our higher self kicking in, sensing this contract is null and void. We no longer need this contract. It may well be that the other person has made a contract with us that we need to be a person that sets a boundary in place. We may need to be that person that may have spent a long time in that relationship and not set any boundaries for quite some time, but the inevitable was that we would eventually set the boundary. So what can happen is that if we set a boundary early on with that person, that can shortcut a lot of our unnecessary misery in having to forego that amount of time in a toxic environment. However, it can also accelerate another person's learning and their journey and their consciousness too. It might hurt even a bit more for them, or it might be a bit more of a shock, or maybe they may not be ready and they might just have to have a toxic encounter with a few more other people that they've contracted with before they get it. But that's really none of our business. That's their journey. And all we can do is work in our highest good and know that our highest good really, when we're operating from a non-toxic level, is for the highest good of all. So that's another talking point I wanted to talk on, is that the free will means that we do choose our experiences, even tough lessons for spiritual growth, but our destiny is not fixed. It's fluid. Pre-agreed contracts, of course, but with room for choice and renegotiation. And as I've mentioned to you, this other talking point I have, which is that 6D spirituality is this dimension of unity consciousness. It's really an ability to love and have wisdom merging at the same time. So it's not like we're just loving or in an addiction love, but we've got this love and this wisdom, and it goes beyond ego, beyond loving people from a place of ego, narcissistic love, love addiction. It's beyond that, beyond duality. It's more like we can love people for them being in their work in progress. They don't have to be, oh, you have to be this in order for me to love you. It's just that I love you because I love you, not because you have to be this and you have to be that and you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to say this and you have to do that and wear this and wear that, all that. Look like this, look like that. Endless conditional love. Not at all. So this kind of love that's born out of the 6D energy and consciousness is very unconditional. And it's very much a mirror. In you, I love that part of me, and that we've been able to embrace our shadow, embrace all our soul, astral fragments that have split off from trauma, and reclaimed those back so that we're comfortable with the mirror. And we're comfortable with the journey, and that we're comfortable with what is perceived as imperfection. And so, yeah, these agreements are like spiritual contracts. They're pre-life agreements for growth. We make these agreements with our guides, with our archangels, spiritual council, whatever you want to call it, about key life lessons, relationships, milestones, and they shape our destiny. But we also, I believe, allow for free will to alter or renegotiate during our life. And I mean, I've mentioned that we can accelerate past our contracts. There's reneging on contracts as well. So this role of conscious choice also brings consequences as well. So if for instance, if we dive into this idea that we can renege or change our soul agreements midlife, that can come at an expense. Like, it could be that we renege on something that was for our highest growth. However, we just decide, no, I'm not going to do it. It's too painful, or I can't handle it, or I don't have. And it could be that at that point we just don't feel that we have the spiritual support enough around us, or we've just stepped out of we've come into spirituality and then we've stepped out of it and gone you kind of toddlerish to the universe because we're not happy with potentially with the results of what we've actually received in our healing journey. Maybe we haven't really got the framework going that we needed to stabilize, to connect to our higher self, to step into some of that 6D consciousness along the way, little dribbles of it. So it may be that we, just get a load more of pain than we had ever imagined that we may have experienced post coming into some kind of spirituality and recovery. It's interesting. It's more painful when you know. Sometimes when you already know what you're doing and then you do it, it can be much more painful as well. However, there can be a natural falling out from moving away from our soul's path, and the importance of aligning choices with our higher self versus lower fears or willfulness is it's a daily practice. And I know they say in addiction circles it's a day at a time. It so is a day at a time, because sometimes when we're sick, like the lonely, sick, angry, or tired, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, halt, but then it's sick as well, halts. We're vulnerable, and what can happen is the etheric body thins away and our imprints come forward, and we can feel like we're flooded, because emotionally when our etheric body is not holding buoyancy around our unhealed astral body, it turns the temperature up, it turns everything up on our vulnerability, really. And we can feel like a child, and we can feel really, I've had enough, and those kind of things. So a lot of early recovery, and going to encourage everybody here, is to just get your support, like ramp it up. Like, don't underestimate how much you will need. Always have 5 people that you can turn to say anything to without judgment. Have your routines in play that keep you buoyant. Don't get arrogant. Don't assume you don't need it. Stay humble. Stay human. Stay humble, like meaning human. Like, really stay human and go, I know I'm a human being, and I know I need. I know there'll be down days, and I just need to prepare for them. I need to have a solid foundation of support for myself, and be loving to myself about that. Especially if I know there'll be days I don't feel I have enough support. I need to know I'm setting this up as reparenting myself to have enough support. So I can't stress that enough, how important that is, because a lot of us have grown up to be so independent, and adult children at young ages, that we think I'll be fine. Oh, I've got this. Well, that's just arrogance, and it's an illusion. We never do have got it. We just need to make sure we've got all the support in the world when we don't. So just moving into another talking point
how this 6D consciousness helps us is it helps us to move from this space of like victimhood. Oh, why this happened to me? I'm going to, take revenge on someone now. And it moves us from this victim, because only like this victim mentality, in that victim mentality, do people do the revenge and the blame game. So when they're feeling like a victim, that's when they want to take revenge. They want to hurt because they're hurting. But that is actually very disempowered. So what this 6D consciousness brings us is a really elevated sense of empowerment, because no one's out to get us. No one's trying to do us wrong. We've planned our lives. We're responsible for how we respond. And so we're moving away from this victim mentality, away from the blame game, away from, why is this happening to me? And we're stepping into empowerment. And we're realizing how powerful our choices are and our mindset is, and how we view the world from that 360 perspective is. And taking ultimate responsibility does mean that we are stepping into our power. We're choosing how to respond rather than just reacting. And we're coming from a place of more heart-centered consciousness, because we're responding from a place that is genuinely heart-centered and understanding of the mirror that we're looking at, rather than blaming someone for the hurt that we're feeling. So yeah, it really does expand our heart consciousness in a big way. And I know that some people do turn to, affirmations, and that helps them to repeat those things. I'm more of a believer, just really believe it. Like, really do believe, not just practice. Really believe all is well and in perfect order. Everything's happening in my highest good, always. Really believe those things. Those two things, all is well and in perfect order. Everything's happening to me for my highest good, always. And also for the highest good of all, always. And that gratitude, that belief, and it genuinely raises your vibration. Like, they've done megahertz tests on these kind of things, that it amplifies us to be able to keep buoyant, our etheric body to keep buoyant. And when you do feel like you need to, I guess, refresh or reflect on your contracts, you can take a moment I believe you can take a moment and just go into a little quiet meditation, and then imagine your spiritual counsel there and say, hey, how am I going? What's going on? Do I need to renegotiate anything? And if that's too hard, get a journal out, start writing, see if, some insight comes through as you're journaling, and release the guilt around reneging on contracts or forming new ones or renegotiating. It's your will, it's your choice, it's your life. There's no mistakes and there's no wrong turns. It's just a matter of finding your path, staying on your path, and when you get off your path and notice it, going, oh, that's interesting. That doesn't feel like my path. And then coming back onto your path again. So you noticed, hey, that's good. Hey, it took you, 2 months in that toxic relationship recently rather than 2 years or 2 decades? Well done. That kind of thing. Or even 2 hours, even better. I just want to say that I'm a really big believer, this last talking point, I'm a really big believer on the role of joy and pain in spiritual growth. And a lot of people, I know the process, the grieving process, we need to heal through sadness, grief process, shock, denial, anger, depression, gratitude. I know that there's a lot of talk on spiritual bypassing, and I don't recommend it. However, when you're operating in 6D consciousness, you do tend to move from a lot quicker through the grief process. So what may take a while to come to terms with things, because of your mindset and because you're understanding that everything's happening in your highest good and for you, there's no blame game, which is part of the grief cycle, is The, blaming and revenge thing usually happens in stage 2, in the anger stage. What usually happens around that is potentially anger at yourself for not getting the lesson, and it's less directed towards other people, and there might be a bit of with your own self around that, a little bit of a tussle with, oh God, or rolling of the eyes, I could have done better. I knew that niggling feeling was there. There's more of that internal kind of processing of anger rather than at everybody else. It can spill onto other people because you're angry at yourself, and then you don't notice it's all coming out sideways and you're taking it out on everybody else. However, what happens is spiritual bypassing is just when you jump into, everything's fine. I shouldn't be feeling that negative emotion. There are no negative emotions. There's just emotions, and they teach us stuff about ourselves. Anger teaches us our boundaries, and it teaches us our value system, and it teaches us how, what we prefer to do, not instead of what we prefer not to do, and who we want to be with and who we don't want to be with. Sadness teaches us what's important to us and what we need in our lives and how we can set ourselves up for that in more detail. And, fear teaches us to be careful and to really be in touch with our intuition and know when things don't feel right. So fear begins the grief cycle, moves to anger, then sadness, and then boom, out the other side. And then we can feel gratitude for the lesson. However, 6D consciousness is not about spiritual bypassing all of that, just jumping into happy days. It is about acknowledging, hey, that hurt, that was painful, I felt that loss, and what's important to me is this, and I am afraid that might happen again. It's about working through all those things, still with under the banner of it's for my highest good. So you can actually not get stuck. That's where people have issues, is when they get stuck in the grief cycle. That's when they have issues. The grief cycle itself is perfect. It's when they get stuck somewhere, that's when it metastasizes and it just creates physical, mental health problems and relationship problems. So the 6D perspective can help people, like a little bridge to under the grief cycle rather than over it, with spiritual bypassing, just to support the process and say, yes, it is all in my highest good. So what can I learn from this? How can my higher self guide me to make some choices from this experience that create a better internal and external environment for my spiritual health, my mental health, my emotional health, my physical health, all of them. So that's where we can not get stuck in the pain. And then what also then happens is, not surprisingly, is that we feel more joy more often. And we even feel joy while we're going through the grieving process. We may have moments of joy, a lot more moments of joy, and we might dip in and we might dip out and all that. But there's a buoyancy, and also there's not a need for pain in order to heal, or let's go searching for it, let's hunt it down, and let's be addicted to our misery in order to feel worthy of spiritual recovery and spiritual growth. Not at all. Joy is a beautiful thing, and sure, people can be addicted to joy and totally be in that whole bypassing of the other emotions. However, joy itself, pure joy, which is connected to, I believe, higher energies, is something that we can, over a period of a day, feel more plugged into more often. And so it's more part of our day. So, healing through joy changes our vibration and it attracts new experiences. It helps us to be in our gratitude more. It helps with our health, and it helps with feeling like we are genuinely grateful and in freedom in our soul and in our spirit, rather than held down by life and life's experiences. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I think we all got a good coverage of how destiny versus choice exists in this 6D consciousness, and I look forward to anybody who wants to talk about it. Please let me know, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you on it. It would be lovely. All right, blessings to you all. and enjoy your day and your joy, and make some really cool higher self choices so that you're feeling that you're in an empowered seat and driving the wheel of that bus. See you next time.